petualangan ini, mari kita ketuk pintu yang sama, membawa mimpi paling serius seluruh dunia. Bayangkan betapa cantik dan lucunya gemuruh petir ini disanding rintik-rintik yang gemas dan merayakan amin paling serius seluruh dunia. Amin paling serius seluruh dunia.
Lara rasane ati nganti ra bisa lali, tresno tulus saka ati dilarani. Kowe janji tresno tulus saka ati, nyatane kowe gawe lara ati. Piye kabarmu sayang, apa kowe eling aku? Biyen sing mbok tinggal tanpa wasane, kowe ninggal aku pas sayang-sayange, lunga ninggal tatu ning atiku, tatu ning atiku lara rasane, nganti kaya diiris-iris rasane, aku nalika aku sayang-sayange, kowe mutus terus cukup samene, ronto-ronto ati rasane, kaya ora bisa tak ibaratake, omong mergo masalah sing sepele, kowe duwe tresno liyane. Piye kabarmu sayang, apa kowe eling aku? Biyen sing mbok tinggal tanpa Dialog dini hari kepada diriku sendiri, tak bisa ku tertidur lagi, melayang pikirku tak pasti. Dialog dini hari, resah gelisah mengiringi, berharap ada yang mengerti, berharap kau ada di sini. Tenang-tenang yang tak kunjung datang, menanti-nanti cahayamu, beri aku petunjukmu. Tenang-tenang, oh datanglah tenang hari ini. Dialog dini hari, resah gelisah mengiringi, berharap ada yang mengerti, berharap kau ada di sini. Tenang-tenang yang tak kunjung datang, menanti-nanti cahayamu, beri aku petunjukmu. Kadang-kadang kelam ini datang menghampiri. Tenang-tenang yang tak kunjung datang, menanti-nanti cahayamu, beri aku petunjukmu. Tenang-tenang, oh datanglah tenang hari ini. Tenang-tenang yang tak kunjung datang, menanti-nanti cahayamu, beri aku petunjukmu. Kadang-kadang kelam ini datang menghampiri. Tenang-tenang yang tak kunjung datang, menanti-nanti cahayamu, beri aku petunjukmu. Tenang-tenang, oh datanglah tenang hari ini. Jauhkan ku dari sedih itu, aku merindu padamu. Jauhkan ku dari gelap itu, aku kembali padamu.
Thank you very much for your readiness to join this Studium Generale. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Distinguished
Waalaikumsalam.
resource
Everyone.
person, Dr. Raqib Chowdhury from Monash University. Distinguished host of Universitas PGRI di Buana, Surabaya, Dr. Sunu Catur Budiono M.Hum, the Dean of Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, Mr. Fajar Susanto SSMPD, the Head of Department of English Education Department, distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let us thank to Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala who has given us some mercies and blessings so that we can attend this Studium Generale without any trouble and obstacles. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to our great event today, the Studium Generale, hosted by English Education Department, Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, Universitas PGRI di Buana, Surabaya. We would like to thank everyone here for taking time to attend our respectable program. The aim of this program is sharing the fundamental of qualitative research in English language and language teaching. And I'm Nunung Nuryati, and I will be your master of ceremony for this event. And I would like to share the agenda of the event today. The first one is opening. Second one, national anthem, Indonesia Raya. And then the third is welcoming speech by the Dean of Faculty of Social Science and Humanities. It also as the opening, officially opening for this program. And then fourth, the main agenda, the Studium Generale, and under the title,
Recording in progress.
Designing Qualitative Research in English Language and Language Teaching by Dr. Raqib Chowdhury from Monash University. And then the fifth one, question and answers, followed by handover token of appreciation. And then the last closing speech by Head of English Education Department. Now let's begin the program. To open officially the event, the speech will be delivered. And we would like to invite Dr. Sunu Catur Budiono M.Hum, the Dean of Social Science and Humanities, Universitas PGRI di Buana, Surabaya. Yeah, I'm so sorry. The second program is National Anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, next agenda is welcoming speech to officially open the program. It will be delivered by the Dean of Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, Dr. Sunu Catur Budiono M.Hum. We would like to invite Dr. Sunu Catur Budiono M.Hum to convey his speech. The floor is yours.
Bisa dibukakan nggak, Mas?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Miss Nunung. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selamat pagi, salam budaya, Om Swastiastu. Bapak, Ibu, peserta Studium Generale yang saya hormati, pada kesempatan ini saya akan menyampaikan salam pembukaan ini, sambutan saya ini dalam bahasa Indonesia. Yang terhormat Dr. Raqib Chowdhury dari Fakultas Ilmu Pendidikan Monash University, Australia. Dan dengan segala hormat, saya juga ingin menyapa orang-orang yang luar biasa yang bergabung dalam acara ini, baik peserta dari Indonesia maupun peserta dari luar negeri. Wajah dan senyum Anda yang bersinar indah pagi ini sungguh membanggakan kami. Tentu saja, saya tidak bisa melupakan begitu saja yang terhormat dan berjiwa besar, Ketua Jurusan Program Studi Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris, Bapak Fajar Susanto. Anda selalu di hati saya, dan Anda semuanya, kita semuanya semoga selalu dalam berkah dan rahmat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan yang Maha Esa.
Thank you. I would like to interpret Dr. Sunu's speech. Greeting for all participants, ladies and gentlemen, at this moment. He would like to share his speech in Bahasa Indonesia to the respectable Dr. Raqib Chowdhury as the main speaker for today's Studium Generale. And also at the same time, the Dean, Dr. Sunu, want to greet all participants. Of course, he doesn't forget the head of department, Mr. Fajar Susanto. He always in his heart.
Saya merasa tersanjung, merasa terhormat untuk mewakili seluruh sivitas akademika dalam acara ini, untuk memberikan salam yang rendah hati kepada peserta Studium Generale yang hebat ini. Studium Generale ini mengusung tema merancang penelitian kualitatif dalam pengajaran bahasa Inggris. Tentu saya berfantasi tentang sebuah forum intelektual yang sangat direkomendasikan. Apalagi Studium ini dipandu, diorkestrasi oleh Dr. Raqib Chowdhury, orang yang tentu bisa mencerahkan kita semuanya, terutama di dalam penelitian kualitatif yang terkait dengan bahasa dan pembelajaran bahasa. Kita tidak perlu mengkhawatirkan beliau karena saya telah menelusuri karya beliau dan spesialisasinya. Beliau menguasai kurikulum sekolah, pengajaran dan pendidikan inklusi yang tentu saja dapat bermanfaat bagi kita semuanya. Hal itu yang membuat bangga untuk bertemu dengan beliau karena beliau memiliki dan kita tentu memiliki pakar yang paling dicari saat ini. Dan hal ini akan menjadi langkah trajektori bagi jurusan pendidikan bahasa Inggris, khususnya Universitas PGRI di Buana, untuk melangkah lebih maju.
Okay, Dr. Sunu is flattered to, as the representative of the faculty member, all the faculty member, to be here with the organization of Studium Generale with the topic of designing qualitative research in English language and language teaching. And then also he fantasized that this event will be organized by us, by Universitas PGRI di Buana, because the Studium Generale, led by the expert of Dr. Raqib Chowdhury, and he should not be afraid that Dr. Raqib Chowdhury will give the best of his work, because Dr. Sunu has already tracked all the works done by Dr. Raqib Chowdhury. And also, it will be great for English department if we have this kind of event.
Sebagai dekan Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Humaniora, saya mengucapkan syukur kepada Tuhan Yang Maha Esa memiliki program studi pendidikan bahasa Inggris yang senantiasa menjalankan forum-forum akademik internasional yang sangat penting untuk memajukan pengetahuan, perspektif, dan integritas secara global. Saya juga mendengar bahwa program studi pendidikan bahasa Inggris memiliki berbagai kerjasama dengan universitas asing. Tentu saja ini di luar ekspektasi saya. Dalam hati nurani saya yang dalam, saya benar-benar yakin siapapun yang bergabung dalam forum ini akan mendapatkan pengalaman dan pengetahuan yang terbaik. Dan waktu Anda untuk berada di sini tentu tidak sia-sia. Percayalah bahwa saya tahu apa yang saya nyatakan. Terakhir, saya sangat berterima kasih atas kemauan, keinginan, dan komitmen program studi pendidikan bahasa Inggris untuk selalu menggaungkan getaran intelektual dan spektrum akademik. Saya hanya akan mengatakan terima kasih, dan terima kasih. Selamat datang di Studium Generale ini yang bertajuk merancang penelitian kualitatif dalam bahasa Inggris dan pengajaran bahasa oleh Dr. Raqib Chowdhury. Saya sangat senang atas kehadiran beliau di sini. Saya bangga untuk itu. Saya Suno Catur Budiono, Dekan Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Humaniora Universitas PGRI di Buana, Surabaya, senantiasa menyemangati yang terbaik untuk kita semua.
As the Dean of Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, Dr. Sunu Catur, very grateful that English department has this kind of international academic forum. And it will be globally presented to many different kinds of academic. And also, Dr. Sunu has heard that English Education Department has a collaboration, international collaboration with many international universities, and he is sure that everybody will get benefits from this. And he has also wished that all have done by this English department will share the intellectual benefits and also will widen and the spectrum, international spectrum of academics. And he also welcome to this Studium Generale, and he is very glad and very proud that this Studium Generale led by Dr. Raqib Chowdhury in presenting the topic today. And Dr. Sunu also close with hope that everybody will get the benefits. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the meaningful speech from Dr. Sunu Catur Budiono as the head, as the Dean of Faculty of Social Science and Humanities. Ladies and gentlemen, reaching the main agenda, Studium Generale. The topic raised for this Studium Generale is designing qualitative research for English language and language teaching. For us, researchers and students, the principle of qualitative research has been applied for quite some time to strengthen our understanding. Therefore, for this topic is always eagerly awaited. Moreover, the resource person, Dr. Raqib Chowdhury from Monash University. In addition to several countries, Dr. Raqib is also popular among academics in Indonesia. Here are the profile of Dr. Raqib. Dr. Raqib is senior lecturer in Faculty of Education, Monash University. He has been teaching since 1996 in Bangladesh, Australia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and he's got his PhD from Monash in 2009. And he is supervising PhD students since 2010 and complete PhD supervision from Indonesia for students and then uh, 10 for the whole. And then the current PhD supervision is 10 students, and then 3 from Indonesia. And he has also has been written books, including in designing TESOL and international education abuse and also exploitation, multilingual methods. And he also as the editor-in-chief in TESOL Bangladesh Journal. And then also some books in methodologies. Yeah. And also as the Indonesian expert from Monash, her faith Indonesian engagement, and also he has key speakers, keynote speakers, and visiting scholars in many countries. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to inform how the presentation will be going. Yeah. The first the presentation of the material, and then followed by question and answer, and then the last the moderator will draw conclusions. So, ladies and gentlemen, guests and participants, I would like to invite Dr. Raqib Chowdhury to deliver the materials. Dr. Raqib, time is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nunung Nuryati. Good afternoon from Melbourne, Australia. I know it's still morning in Surabaya, so good morning to everyone. But good afternoon from Melbourne, Australia. Here it's almost 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon. It's great to be here. Happy New Year to everyone. At the beginning, I would like to acknowledge a number of people. First of all, I would like to thank the rector of Universities, PGRI di Buana, Surabaya, Dr. Subando Wo, for officially inviting me as a visiting lecturer for this Studium Generale today. I'd like to thank the Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, Dr. Sunu Chatur Budiono, for being here and gracing the occasion. I would like to thank the head of the English Language Education Department, Mr. Fajar Susanto. A very special thanks to the head of the Language Center, Mr. Salim Naban, who's been behind the scenes in organizing this event. Very special thanks to Salim. A special thanks to Bu Nunung Nurjati, the Master of Ceremonies for this program, Ms. Farah Dian Andanti, of course, who is the coordinator of international collaboration. And I'm really glad to be here. And although I've never been to Surabaya or to the university, I've been to Indonesia many, many times. I look forward to seeing you in person sometimes later this year. And although I haven't been there, I have had this connection with PGRI Adi Buana, Surabaya, for more than 2 years, because in 2019, I met Bu Nunung and Bu Farah at a workshop that was organized by Ahmed Dahlan University in Jogja. And that was the beginning of our connection, of our collaboration between Monash University and PGRI Adi Buana Surabaya University. And I hope in the future we will have more collaborations, and eventually I'll see you, some of you there. So good morning once again, and welcome to the presentation, my fellow colleagues from the university and students. And I also acknowledge that there are participants from other universities in Indonesia, as well as outside Indonesia as well. I would like to start by talking about 3 things, just as a way of guiding you through my presentation. 3 things. The first one is, I acknowledge that in the audience, many of you are experienced researchers. You have written theses, you have published articles in journals, you've presented at conferences, you are familiar with research methodology, and you are expert researchers. On the other hand, I also know that in the audience, there are some of you who haven't written a thesis. Some of you have just started writing a proposal. There might be some who haven't even decided on a topic. You don't have any experience of research methodology or conducting research. So for me, the challenge is to reconcile, on one hand, expert researchers, and on the other hand, novice researchers. So I will try to present in a way so that everyone, regardless of your experience or lack of experience, whether you're an expert or a novice, you can get something useful from my presentation. But I know that there is a lot of diversity in the audience. Secondly, I have 1 hour for the presentation. I have many slides. I will skip some of the slides, not just because we don't have enough time, but those slides are self-explanatory, so I don't need to explain them. So for example, I have some checklists, I have some dot points, I have some frameworks, and I will make the PowerPoint presentation to all presenters through the university. So everyone in the audience now, we have more than 300 people, you will get a copy of the presentation. So if I rush through some slides, don't worry about it, all right? I will skip through some slides. And finally, some of you have sent me questions in advance. So we have 1 hour of question and answer at the end. And I have looked at the questions that you've sent. Most of them I will address in my presentation. The remaining ones we can do in the final 1 hour. But other than that, as Bu Nunung will explain to you, or has explained to you already, we have 1 hour for Q&A. You can type in your questions in the chat box, or you can turn on your mic and ask me questions after my presentation. And Bu Nunung will facilitate the Q&A sessions. But those of you who have already sent me questions, I will address them after my presentation. So let's get started. So this is a checklist of what we are doing today. If you look at research methodology or designing research, we have to contextualize it. We can't start with designing. We have to start with understanding what research is, what a theory is, what a theoretical framework is, what the different components are. And then we can move on to designing methodology, and particularly designing methodology in qualitative research, and particularly, specifically in the field of English language and language teaching. That's the topic today. So these topics in red are the focus of my presentation. The rest of it is just to provide the context. So I will spend less time on this, and I will spend more time on this. So this is some of the things. As you can see, we will look at how to choose and design methodology, how to understand and conduct data analysis, and we will look at 3 aspects of the research design or the methodology chapter. 3 aspects. We will look at structure and function, we will look at mechanics of writing, and we will look at some examples of the most common errors when it comes to writing your analysis. So these are the main focus of my presentation today. So let's get started. What is research in the social sciences? You can see 7 definitions here. Don't worry, I'm not going to read them out. But the main thing that jumps to us is that research is systematic, okay, or methodical. That's the main thing that jumps to us from all of these 7 definitions done by different people in different ways. That's the most common feature. Research must be systematic. It must be methodical, okay? That's the main thing. So what does it mean to be systematic? It means we have to conduct our research in a disciplined manner, not in a random way, not in an intuitive manner, but in a systematic manner. What about at Monash? At Monash University, this is how we define research: contributing to new knowledge or using existing knowledge in new and creative ways to generate new concepts and methodologies. See, this is very important. Inventions and understandings. Research is also about communicating and disseminating that knowledge to others, which means research is not just about answering research questions. It is also about contributing to knowledge through your methodological contribution, and also to disseminate or to spread that knowledge to other scholars. So which means if you conduct research, you're not doing it just because it's a requirement of your course, but because you want to create knowledge and share that knowledge with others as well. So what are the steps to conducting research in social sciences? Where do we start? What's the usual order of things to do? So let's take a look at this. We have to start with deciding a topic. Now, a topic is broad, and then we have to decide on a problem statement, which is narrow. So what is a topic? So giving you an example, CLT, communicative language teaching, that is a topic. We start with a topic, but the topic is too broad. It doesn't tell us about what kind of research it will be. So what is the problem statement? That is where we choose on a particular issue, on a particular problem about CLT, which is the broad topic. So for example, you can say the cultural incompatibility of CLT in Indonesian classrooms, why CLT is problematic in the Indonesian culture. That is a problem statement, okay? And that is narrow, but CLT itself is only a topic. It is broad, it is not enough. And then we conduct a review of literature to acknowledge what other people have already said about CLT and the problems of CLT in Indonesia. And then we have to use and synthesize different concepts and theories in order to make a theoretical framework. And only after that, we will know what our research questions are, not before that. So my advice to you is you have to conduct your study in this manner. Don't start with a research question. If you have a research question, even before you've done a review of literature, even before you have synthesized the theories and concepts, then it is premature. Don't start with a research question. Start with a topic and a problem statement. So what happens once you've got your research questions? We design a research methodology or a research design. We formulate it. And then according to that methodology, we collect data. And then we find and analyze the data. We make meaning of data, which is findings and analysis. And then we consider the implications of data. So what? Which is the discussion. And finally, by doing the discussion, we answer the research questions. Okay? So if you look at formulating the research questions to answering the research questions, this is what happens. The ultimate aim of writing a thesis or conducting research is to answer your research questions, which means you cannot start your research before you have research questions. But even before you have research questions, you need to do this, okay? Never start with a research question. So my advice is always follow this order, regardless of your topic, always in social sciences, in English language and language teaching, this is the order that you should follow. So I want you to ask yourself, which stage are you at? Which stage? And these points in red font are the ones that we will be looking at in more detail in the coming slides, okay? The second thing, once you've understood the sequence, the stages of conducting research, there are some fundamental concepts that you need to clarify in your head before you start doing research. These are some of the fundamental concepts. So from theory, theoretical framework, conceptual framework, ontology, epistemology, axiology, paradigm, etc. And then it comes to methodology, methods, data reporting, presentation, and analysis, which we will be looking at. But before you do this, make sure you understand all of these. There are many books and articles where you can understand the definition of these things. I would recommend my own article where there is a definition, very, very easy to understand, practical, exemplary definitions for all of these things in my article. It is open access. You can download it, and there is a shortened link. So take a note of this link. And if you go to that link, or if you click on it, you can download the article and you can get very easy definitions of what is a theory, for example. How many of you here can tell me the definition of a theory? Okay, we all probably know what it means, but it is difficult to express. So you will get definitions of that in that article. All right. The second thing we need to look at once you've decided on the fundamental concepts and the process is, do you want to do qualitative or do you want to do quantitative? Now, today's topic is, of course, qualitative, not quantitative. But whether our research should be qualitative or quantitative depends on a number of things. So, for example, it depends on the research question. It depends on the research, the problem statement. It depends on your objective. It depends on what you want to do. So on one hand, we have quantitative studies, and these are quantifiable. They involve numbers. They involve measuring something or quantification. And they use what we call a positivist approach. So positivism is one of the two epistemologies that I discussed in the previous slide, epistemology, ontology. And a positivist approach is an objectivist approach where there is no interpretation, there is no subjectivity. You know, it's all facts and figures and numbers and quantification and indicators and percentages and statistics, all of that. Quantitative studies usually are large studies, so they could be 100 participants, they could be 1,000 participants or more. They often rely on statistical analysis, and they are looking at breadth. They are looking at the wideness of phenomena, not the depth. So that is quantitative. We are not doing quantitative today. So on the other hand, we have qualitative. So that's what we are doing today, qualitative research design. Usually non-numerical data, which means we don't have quantification, we don't have numbers, but you can have some numbers in qualitative research. It is based on a constructivist approach, not a positivist approach, which means reality is subjective. Reality is based on the construction of reality by human participants. Okay, so it is based on interpretivism. So we interpret data. Numbers are reductive. Numbers are not enough. Numbers are not sufficient. Qualitative studies also depend on thick descriptions rather than numbers. They are interpretive, descriptive, and they have smaller sample sizes, smaller. You can do a qualitative case study with only 2 or 3 participants. Whereas if you want to do quantitative, you need many, many more participants. So that's another choice we are making here. The next thing we look at is the difference and the relationship between two things. One is methodology, one is method. Okay. Methodology is the overall design of how data will be collected, how participants would be recruited, what kind of data generation tools will be used, in what order the tools will be used, how the data will be analyzed, how the data would be understood. All of these things together refer to research methodology. Okay, so the methodology is the overall design. An example of methodology is case study. So case study is not a method. Case study is a methodology, or you could say a methodological approach. Ethnography is a methodology. Discourse analysis or critical discourse analysis, methodology, not method. Within methodology, one component is the method. For example, these are the tools or the techniques or the procedures that we use to collect data and analyze data, okay, such as interviews. So an interview or an observation or a survey, these are tools that we use to collect data. These are methods. So which means methods are part of methodology, not the other way around. Methodology overall, method just the tool for collecting data. So I will show you examples of 3 different methods under I will show you the methods that are used under 3 different methodologies. So 3 different methodologies and what kind of methods and data sources are used. The first one is case study. This is the most common methodology for qualitative research in social sciences. So if you're doing your research in English language or language teaching, most of you, maybe 7 or 8 out of 10 of you, most of you will be doing a qualitative case study. So if you're doing a qualitative case study, which is your methodology, these are some of the methods or the data sources under that methodology that you can use. So there is nothing to explain here. I'm just showing that there are a lot of similarities across one methodology to another methodology. And you can ask me questions if you have any. So this is the case study, first one. The second one, this is another qualitative methodology. Ethnography or autoethnography or self-study. So the first one, case study methodology. Second one, self-study methodology or autoethnography methodology. And these are the methods and these are the data sources. And you can see some of these are similar to the case study because case study is more comprehensive. It pretty much covers everything. The third methodology in the qualitative approach is the policy or discourse analysis methods and data sources. So this discourse analysis is a methodology, and under that, it is also a method. Discourse analysis is both a method and a methodology because you can also analyze data, not just collect data, but also analyze data. And these are some of the data sources and methods under discourse analysis. So now you have a look at these 3 examples. So the practical question is, how do I choose a methodology which is appropriate depending on my topic? And secondly, within that methodology, what methods are the most appropriate ones? How do I know which is the best choice to make? In other words, how do I plan or design my overall qualitative methodology? How do I decide on these components? So in the next slide, I will show you a table that would help you step by step, following 4 steps to decide how you can choose among all of these choices, depending on what your topic is. So I'll give you just a few seconds to take a look at these 4 columns, and then I'll explain. Just take a look, especially at the highlighted text here in these columns. All right, so if you look at this table here, everyone, what we can see is it says take a few minutes to consider questions in column 1. So column 1 is research purpose. So research purpose means, what do you want to do? What kind of question do you want to answer? What's the aim of your study? What are the objectives of your study? Right? Aim, objective. Usually a study has one aim. You should be able to write the aim of your study in just 1 sentence. This study aims to investigate blah, 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 blah. Okay, one sentence aim. Objective, several, and the objectives usually correspond with research questions. In order to achieve this aim, the study will dot, 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 4 points. Each of these 4 points will be an objective. So if you look at the first column, research purposes, what do you want to do? What is your research problem? Now remember, the research problem is an issue or a situation or a phenomena that you want to understand better. You want to solve, you want to problematize, okay? That in social science, that's how we understand the issue or the problem. So when we talk about a problem, research problem, it doesn't mean it's a problem. It means it is something that needs to be understood better, needs to be solved or needs to be extended, etc. So what is your research problem? So topic CLT, your topic, you've chosen a topic, remember CLT, communicative language teaching. That is a topic, but that's not a research problem. What is the research problem? The research problem is CLT culturally compatible with the Javanese culture, right? In a school in Java, in a school in Surabaya, for example, you could say, in Surabaya, I want to see whether it's culturally compatible or not, okay? That is the issue. That is the research problem. The cultural compatibility of a Western pedagogy called CLT, which started in Europe, and to see its cultural compatibility in a Southeast Asian nation, right? In the island of Java in Indonesia. That is the issue. So what's the research problem? Okay. And what are the key dimensions? What are the research questions? And most importantly, how can I identify the key elements of my research problems in order to specify a succinct set of research aims, objectives, and research questions, finite research questions. Finite means it's not ongoing, it's not infinite. You know, usually for qualitative research in social sciences, you would have between 2 to 4 research questions, no less than 2, and usually no more than 4. So 2, 3, or 4 research questions. This is the first thing you think about when you're deciding on what kind of methods to use. Second question, data to generate. What kinds of data do you need to generate? Do you need numbers? Do you need percentages? Do you need yes, no? Do you need statistical analysis? Do you need descriptions? Do you need explanations? Do you need criticisms? Do you need opinions? So what kind of research data do I generate? So if you're doing qualitative, you probably need opinions. You probably need critique. You probably need counter arguments. You probably need provocations, etc. And then the question is, how will I generate this data? So if you want critique, if you want counter argument, you can't get that through questionnaires, especially Likert scale or yes, no type, close-ended questions. You can't get critique, right? You need something which is semi-structured. For example, an interview. You need something where it is open-ended. Students can say anything, or your participants can say anything. And the second question is, how much data must I generate? Okay, so it's also a question of not just the type of data, but how much you need. So do you think 4 participants are enough? Or do you need 6 participants? How much the volume of data? Or do you need 10 participants? So that's one way of looking at how much data, the number of participants. The other way to determine the volume of data, the amount of data, is the number of times they will be interviewed, for example. So you may have 4 participants, but 2 rounds of interviews. So in that case, you actually have 8 interviews, 4 participants times 2, 8 interviews. So the amount of data that you will get from 4 participants, 2 rounds of interviews, or 8 participants, 1 round of interview might be more or less the same, okay? So in terms of the volume of data, you're getting equal, but do you want more participants, fewer rounds of interviews, or do you want fewer participants or round of interviews? So that would depend on the aims and the research questions as well. And then there is also the question of validation. Okay, although in qualitative research, we usually don't use validity and reliability. We use trustworthiness, we use credibility, we use transferability. We will talk about that later on. The next thing is you look at your data analysis approaches. What forms of data analysis will I use? So when we talk about forms of analysis, it means coding, it means finding themes, it means clustering, it means looking at frequencies or not, things like that. And I'll show you that in the next slide. And finally, you can't just make up statements justifying your methods. They have to be supported by sources that would inform your justification. So you need some literature. So when we say review of literature, usually we refer to literature on the topic or the issue of your choice, such as CLT or cultural compatibility of CLT, communicative language teaching. But we also need to do a review of literature on methodology so that you can justify why you've chosen case study, so that we can justify why you've chosen a qualitative approach, why you've chosen semi-structured interviews. So the final thing is who provides theories and concepts relevant to your research problem and questions, and how do these guide me in deciding what kinds of data to generate and how to analyze it. So this is a table that would guide you through these 4 stages to decide what kind of approach, so qualitative, quantitative, what kind of methodology, so case study, ethnography, etc., and what kind of methods, so that's observation, interviews, survey, etc., and the number of participants, the round of interviews, and the volume of data that you will need. So these are some of the things. So I have a question from Rini, but I think we will wait until the end. Bu Nunung will guide you through the Q&A session, so please wait. All right. So the second question is, we have decided on the approach, we have decided on the methodology, we have decided on the methods. Now, the next question is, I have collected my data, or I am planning to collect my data. How am I going to actually use the selected tools or the methods to collect the data? How will I analyze the data? And then, I'll do the transcription, but where do I actually start with coding, identifying themes, and then how am I going to organize the writing of my analysis chapter? Am I going to do it research question by research question? So for example, some of you would probably have 3 sections in the chapter, and each section will answer each research question. It could be in your analysis, it could be in your discussion as well. Others would do it by themes, right? And then there's the question of, are the themes emerging from the data, or are they pre-identified themes? So the whole question of how am I going to analyze? So here is another table that would guide you through the process. So we start with, what tools and methods of data analysis will I use? Well, you have already decided that from the previous slide. Remember, you've already decided, yes, CLT, cultural compatibility of CLT, qualitative approach, case study methodology, interview, semi-structured interview method. So you've already made your choices, okay? Next, what analytical frameworks? So the way you will analyze, disrupt or challenge the normalized ways of thinking about the phenomena. So the phenomena means the problem or the issue, which means, is CLT good for Japanese schools or is it not good? That's the phenomena. So are there any kind of analytic frameworks that can challenge us, that can complicate our understanding, that can make us think outside the box? So that's about the normalized ways of thinking, means thinking inside the box. So we want to disrupt it. We want our research approach to make us, to force us to think in certain ways. So that's the, and finally, in the first stage, if I have multiple methods, so I have observation, I have interview, individual interview, and I have group interview as well. So for example, I have focus group discussion, group interview. So I have 3 methods under the same methodology, case study. So the question is, if I have multiple methods, are these in alignment with each other? Are they compatible, or are they going to disrupt each other? Are they going to make it, conflicting for me? Do they complement each other, or do they contrast each other? So here's the question of triangulation. Here is the question of data saturation. And there is also a question of, if I have more than one method, so for example, I have semi-structured interview, observation, group interview, or focus group discussion. Which one do I do first? Now, some of you think, oh, it's obvious. I'll do semi-structured individual interview first. Why? Why? You might say, because that's the way I can get to know my participants. Not necessarily. You can get to know your participants through a reflective journal. Not even meeting them, just tell them to write about themselves. Give them some prompts. Why does it have to be an interview? So you might intuitively think it is best to use this method first and then this method, but you have to justify it. So in order to justify it, you need some literature, you need theories, you need to look at other studies conducted before you to understand how to sequence them, all right? So that is how we answer the question, do the different methods, multiple methods, complement each other, or do they contrast each other? So contrasting is a way of showing triangulation. So you're asking the same question using two different methods, and you're trying to see if there is any conflict, if there is any inconsistency. And your job as the researcher is to reconcile them, not to point out that they are contradicting, but to find out the reason why they are contradicting. Maybe it is worth looking at a different set of data. Maybe it is worth asking them a question once again. Maybe it is your misinterpretation, okay? So contradiction is not a problem for the participant. It is a problem for you to solve. It is not their fault, okay? The next thing, the data to be analyzed by these methods, we need to decide which tools and methods of analysis will be used for which data. Very good question. So for example, if you do thematic analysis, which is the most common kind of analysis for interview data, for qualitative studies in general, and you have two methods. You have journal writing, journal entries. So written accounts of students. They give you an entry of a diary once every week, and then you have semi-structured interviews. Are you going to analyze them in the same way? No. So for the interview data, you might use thematic analysis. For the journal article, for the journal entries, okay, personal logs like diaries, you're going to use discourse analysis, or maybe even critical discourse analysis. So you're using two different analysis or analytical tools for two different data sources. The third one, relevance or usefulness of data analysis methods. So a few questions for you to consider, and I don't need to read all of them. Why are the tools and the methods I choose the best ones for the task? So very, very important. So this is justifying why you chose a particular method, why you chose thematic analysis. Now remember everyone, just because you are doing qualitative study, just because you have interviewed students, just because you have transcribed the data, and just because you have 3 or 4 specific research questions, doesn't make it obvious that it would be a thematic analysis. Why a thematic analysis? Why not a discourse analysis? Why not a narrative analysis? And there are other kinds of analysis as well that I will show you. So you have to justify everything. Nothing is natural. Nothing should be taken for granted. So then comes the writing part. Okay, so I have done the themes, I've got the codes, I've done the themes. So what do I do next? How am I going to organize my data analysis or analyses multiple, okay? What organization methods and structures will help me see data in productive or different ways? So how am I going to present it? So it's very messy, and I'll show you an image in the next slide about how messy it can be, a few slides later on. So it's about writing, and I will show you how to organize your methodology and your analysis chapters in the next slide. And finally, of course, again, you're going to look at some of the sources that would help you justify some of your choices. So these are the 5 steps for deciding on the analysis. So what kind of questions do we ask in qualitative studies, what kind of analytical questions. So I'm not talking about interview questions. I'm talking about the questions that you will ask yourself when you're analyzing your data. Okay, not interview questions, questions for yourself to analyze. Okay, so you're looking at a transcript, this is what you ask. So how does, or how do, why, what factors, etc. Okay, these are some of the questions that you ask yourself. Okay, now for a quantitative study, we might also ask this question, but the questions need to be able to be answered in a quantifiable way, numbers, statistics, percentages, etc. But here we have how, why, what factor kind of questions. For example, take a look at this. Now, these questions can also be questions that are your research questions. Okay, so we have three sets of questions. The first set of questions, your research questions. The second set of questions, your interview questions, the questions that you are asking your participants. And the third set of questions, the question that you are asking yourself when you're looking at the data. So the questions for analysis. So the difference between these three sets of questions is that the participants never answer the research questions directly, never. This is very important, and I want to repeat this once again. Your participants will never answer the research questions. You, the researcher, will answer the research questions. The participants will answer the second set of questions, interview questions, or any other kind of questions through your method. So it could be a survey, questionnaire. It could be observation. It could be, journal logs, writing, like a self-reflection, writing of self-reflection. They will be answering those questions. And the third set of questions is the questions that you ask when you're analyzing. How do early career English teachers become English teachers? So I have an Indonesian PhD student from Surakarta, Solo. She's looking at the PPG program, and she's looking at the curriculum and the standardized curriculum and how PPG graduates try to adjust or make amendments to their training, teacher training after graduation and when they're in service, when they are teaching. How do teachers and students construct the intercultural through their curriculum work? What about the last one? What truths are established? So this is a discourse analysis study. What truths are established about effective practice by contemporary policy in Indonesia? So these are your research questions. And the questions that you ask while analyzing would be compatible to some of these. The most important thing here is, in qualitative studies, we do not ask yes, no questions. Okay, because a yes, no question in most cases can be answered in a single line, yes, no. Okay, is it higher? What's the percentage? Most people, less people, going up, going down, binaries, quantifications, numbers, statistics. These are all for quantitative studies. For qualitative studies, we should not have yes, no question. Instead, we should have how, why, what factors, etc. These kind of questions. For the same reason, usually in qualitative studies, we don't need to have a hypothesis. Although you can have a hypothesis, it is unusual. If you are doing a quantitative study, you can have a hypothesis. And your task or the aim of your study is to prove that hypothesis true or to prove it false, right? To falsify it. But in qualitative studies, we usually don't have a hypothesis and we don't have yes, no questions. All right. So when it comes to the actual analysis of qualitative data, we have two phases of analyzing your data. So when I say data, think about you had 4 participants, you interviewed them once or twice, you transcribe the interviews. So in front of you, you have many, many pages of interview data, right? And you have transcribed them, so it's in front of you. So what do we do next? We analyze. So when you analyze in a qualitative study, there are 2 phases of analysis. The first one is the general one, and the second one is the specialized or the advanced one. Okay, so the first one is more intuitive. The first one is more natural. The first one is more spontaneous. The first one is more commonsensical, you could say. It's almost like I'm relying on my intuition. I'm relying on my common sense. I can do it without any theories, right? So that's the general one. The specialized or the advanced one is where it gets more methodical. Now, remember what I said about the definition of research at the beginning of my presentation? Systematic, 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 systematic. So if you only do a general or introductory first pass analysis based on your common sense, based on your intuition, based on your spontaneous feeling, logic, it is not enough because it is not systematic. In that case, you do have a data analysis, but it is not good enough for academic context. It is not good enough for a thesis. It is not good enough for your study. It is just an analysis that can be done without any theories, that can be done by a journalist, that can be done by anyone who doesn't have any idea of research methodology. Anyone can do it. That is not enough. So the first pass analysis is only the first pass. There is a second pass as well. So this one is inductive logic or analytic induction, which means you don't start with any assumption. You believe that the theory or the statement that you want to make as a result of your study is embedded or grounded in the phenomena, in the topic. So in your case, the cultural compatibility of CLT, communicative language teaching. So this is, you can, from the theoretical point of view, this is called the grounded theory. You don't have any theory at the beginning. You know that there is already theory there. You're just generating it. All right. So inductive. Deductive is where you say A is this, B is this, therefore C is this. So that's deductive. It's so coding and grouping and categorizing. It is not rigid or formulaic. And that's why I say it's kind of logical, it's spontaneous, it's commonsensical. So it doesn't have any formula. So if you're talking to 4 people, even without research, even just generally in a lounge room, in a cafeteria, and you are asking them, so why do you think students are not doing so well in the national examination? Okay, and there are 4 of you having coffee, and you're asking them, students are not doing so well. In the last 2 years, students have been doing very poorly in the national university entrance test. So they will give you, among the 4 of them, they will give you 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different reasons. Okay, in your head, you can simply categorize them. Okay, so you can say these 3 reasons are financial, economical. These 3 reasons are cultural. These 2 reasons are to do with technology. So you're categorizing in your head and saying, okay, I have a total number of 11 different reasons from my friends here in the coffee shop, and I can categorize them. So that's the general or introductory analysis. It's the inductive logic, okay? And it's not formulaic, it's just commonsensical, all right? So just to give you an example of the other type, the second pass, okay? Now this is the specialized or advanced analysis, and this is what makes your research design academic, disciplined, and something that is acceptable in academia, okay? So the different types of analysis that we have, not the commonsensical ones, content and thematic analysis are the most common ones to use. So again, 7 or 8 out of 10 of you will be using thematic analysis or content analysis. These 2 are not completely different. Narrative analysis can also be thematic analysis, but you report it through stories. So the writing is different, but narrative can also be thematic. Discourse analysis is usually about text or media or images. Conversation analysis, as the name suggests, is about conversation. There is another name for conversation analysis, which is metalinguistic analysis, which can also be either recorded text, So with audio and intonation and all of that, or it could simply be a text transcribe without the intonation. And finally, you have visual analysis. So remember, in order to do your analysis, this is not enough. You can't just base your analysis on your intuition or common sense. You have to choose one of these, okay? And when you choose it, you have to justify your choice through theories and through statements and definitions and all of that. For example, if you have chosen thematic
Kemudian
analysis,
semua itu,
why
misalnya,
did you choose
Then all of
thematic
that, for
analysis? Why
example,
not
if
narrative analysis?
then
Why not
all of
discourse
that, for
analysis?
example,
You can say, oh, because I had interviews. Well, interviews can also be done through discourse analysis. Discourse analysis is not just for books. It can be done through interview data as well. So you have to justify why it is thematic analysis. How do you know how to justify? Remember the two tables that I showed you? That is how you will know. And of course, you can read books, and the books will tell you that thematic analysis is good for this kind of research. You can use that kind of logic. So the general qualitative analytical strategies. So in other words, how the tools that we use to analyze qualitative studies, these are some. So I'm not going to describe all of them, but just take a look. Most of these are very common. So you take notes, you look at developing patterns, you look at emerging patterns, you look at consistencies, you compare one participant with other participant, or first round interview with second round interview to look at similarity, dissimilarity. And then from the narrow, you move on to broader analysis, right? So you probably start with only one participant, which is the hardest one. And then you do the second one. And the third one, you say, oh, I can see there is a common pattern here. Okay, all three of them are saying the same thing, but in three different ways. That's when you started looking at the codes and then the themes, right? Triangulation is the concept of verifying the authenticity or the reliability of one statement from a participant using multiple methods. So you can ask a question to a participant through an interview, but you're not convinced enough. You want to make sure that this is exactly what the participant means. So you will ask the question differently through an email or in a focus group discussion. And you will get a different kind of answer. And then you will try to reconcile these two answers. That is called triangulation, right? So multiple methods on the same inquiry to enhance the reliability of statements of data is called triangulation. And of course, theory building. Now, this is the order of how we move on from reading to coding to theme identification, okay? So we start with coding first. We get our codes. Codes are very informal. Codes can be in your head. You don't even have to write them down, okay? And then from codes, we move on to themes. Themes are more systematic, okay? Themes are usually the ones that are aligned with your research questions. Codes do not need to align with your research questions, but theme needs to. So how do we move from one to another? Let's take a look at each of these individually first. So coding, what is coding? So in deductive research, so when I say deductive, it means this and this, therefore this, that is deductive. Inductive is when you don't have statements, when it's the reverse. You have something, you have a statement, and then you justify it, okay? And the theory is already embedded, that is inductive. Two different approaches. Now you can completely ignore what I just said, as long as you know what to do. So coding or indexing is another name for coding, means shorthand devices. Shorthand devices. So it means it could be a highlight color. So red means CLT is good. Yellow highlight means CLT is not effective. Blue means CLT is neutral, or this statement means that CLT is neutral. So you can highlight it, you can underline it. So it's like it's a label, okay, to organize data. This is coding. So, it could be just 3 highlights. It could be underlined. It could be a circle. It could be a star, etc. And sometimes coding can use existing codes, which means a similar study was conducted 2 years ago, which you have read about, which you have written in your review of literature review chapter, that used 6 codes to identify 3 themes, let's say. You want to use the same codes because it makes sense to you. So you will acknowledge it. You will say that the initial codes for this study were pre-existing and they have been borrowed from Davidson 2009, that study. So pre-existing. So that is coding. Open coding means you don't have any pre-existing codes. It's open. You might have 5, 10, you might have 15. You don't know. These are loose codes and they come from the data itself. So that's a very inductive approach to research, open codes. So here is an example of an actual transcript of data and see what happens here. So if this is what the transcript looks like, this is what it looks like when you start coding. All right. So you see these labels on the right-hand margin. These are the descriptive codes used to label and categorize stretches of interview transcript. Now, if you look at the transcript, there are more than 2 people here. So this is likely a focus group interview, right? FGD, focus group interview, or a group interview. And you can see that there are parents and VTech, 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 parents. So there are 2 codes in this stretch of the interview. As I said, you can either do codes by writing such annotations on the margin. You can do it using a colored highlighter. It doesn't matter. But these are not themes. These are codes. What happens after that is, what you're looking at is a screenshot from a data analysis tool called NVivo. I don't know if some of you use NVivo, but NVivo is a tool that can help you generate themes from codes, and it is helpful especially for discourse analysis, critical discourse analysis, or meta-linguistic analysis when you're looking at frequency of words and utterances, but it can also help you with other kinds of data, including thematic analysis. So although the arrows start from here to the right, I want you to actually look at the right side first and then keep on moving on the left. So I want you to look at the opposite direction, okay, opposite direction. So imagine that these here are the codes that you have written on the margin of your transcription. Okay, so this is what you do first. It's raw, it's loose, it's intuitive, it can be predetermined, no problem. Next, you categorize some of these into smaller clusters because they come under the same kind of code. So this is a study into banking, so indebtedness. So some of these are part of indebtedness, some are part of counter, expert advice. And then when you have identified these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 theme clusters, you can further narrow them down into 3 smaller categories. And these 3 smaller categories will usually correspond to your research questions. Now, it doesn't mean that you have 3 research questions and each of these will correspond to 1 research questions. No, it could actually be 2 of them. They both align with 1 research question, and this one to the other one. And the third one, they do not align directly, but it's something like it's an overall thing which you will bring up in your discussion, not in your themes. That's fine. So we are looking at loose codes, to coding clusters, to themes, and the themes will correspond to the research questions. All right. So thematic analysis. So I'm just wrapping up this part of the discussion, and then we'll move on to the specialized one. What is a theme? So we are moving from code, which is loose and informal, non-formulaic, to themes which are more systematic and they align with research questions. A category identified by the analyst, which means the researcher, through the data, and it relates to the research focus or to the research question, just as I just said. Okay, so the themes will come later on. You can't get the theme first. You can have predetermined codes, but you should not have predetermined themes. If you have predetermined themes, then you are not doing your analysis correctly, right? You are not doing the identification of theme is the outcome of your analysis. If you already have the themes, and if you're just looking for it, then that's not research, okay? So pre-identified codes, okay. Pre-identified themes, not okay, right? So just summing up the steps in thematic analysis. So remember, thematic analysis is the most common type of analysis. I don't have enough time to describe discourse analysis, narrative analysis, and all other kinds of analysis, ethnographic analysis. I'm just showing one, but the other ones would be quite similar. In terms of coding and theme identification and analysis, they would be very, very similar. Familiarizing yourself with the data. So if you have recorded an interview, the first thing you do is you listen to it without taking notes. You just listen to it at the background and you will start generating ideas in your head. Coding, collating coding into themes, ongoing analysis to refine the specifics of each theme, and finally, the analysis itself when you actually start writing it, producing the report. So familiarizing, generating codes, generating themes, reviewing themes. Themes are not fixed, they can change. Defining and naming the themes, so finalizing the themes, and then writing. So in the next part, the last part of my presentation, I will be looking at the mechanics of writing. How do you actually write your report? So these are the other analysis other than the thematic analysis. So this was thematic analysis. Just go back to thematic analysis. Wait here. No, just the other ones. So this was the thematic analysis. Okay, and these are the other types of analysis. If I get a chance to run a series of workshops, I'll be able to do that, but we can't cover everything today. But as I said, the overall guidelines, steps are very, very similar. All right. So next is we are looking at the format of a thesis or a proposal. So when you're actually writing, how many chapters should you have? And in what order? Now, you already know this more or less, because in social sciences, there is a particular order that everyone follows. So for example, the first chapter is called Introduction. The second one is Review of Literature or Theory. The third one is Methodology or Research Design chapters. Fourth one is Analysis or Findings. And if you're doing a bigger thesis like a PhD, you might have more than one analysis chapters, right? In fact, you might have more than one Review of Literature chapter. And then after analysis, you have discussion, and then you have conclusion, right? I will share the thesis, the table of contents from my PhD thesis if you want to take a look at the distribution. Now, the question is, how do we know based on our topic, how to decide where to put in which chapter? So we can convert these chapters into questions, okay? So we can see the chapters as questions. So here we go. The first one, introduction, is about what? What is the research about? What is the aim? What are the objectives? What are the research questions? What's the rationale, etc., etc. Review of literature, why? Why do we need it? Because there is a gap. Why is there a gap? Why hasn't it been investigated? Why is this a problem? Why is this a challenge? Why don't we know? So it's review of literature. Methodology, how? how am I going to get data? How many participants? How do I understand data? How do I generate codes? How do I analyze data? How many participants do I need? How many groups? How many rounds of interviews? Methodology. And the second, what chapter is analysis? What are they saying? What does this mean? What does this indicate? What is the likely reason for this? This is all analysis. What are the themes, etc. And then the discussion chapter is so what? Okay, so they've said this. What does it mean? So what? There is a contradiction here. So what? What does that mean? People are talking about this more than this. So what? Why is this very frequent as a theme? This theme is very prominent. So what? What does it mean? Okay. And finally, the conclusion and implication chapter is now what? Okay, so now we know the so what. Now what? Implication. Now what do we do? Now that we know that these are the answers to these problems, these questions, now what? What do we do? What are the implications? What kind of studies need to be done in the future? What are the limitations of the current study? What is the recommended next task for us to do? How will it inform our teaching or our learning, etc.? Now what? Okay, so you can use these questions to direct your sequencing of the chapters. So now in the next slides, I will go through individual chapters, these 5 chapters, but I'm going to do it very quickly because we don't have any time and because there is nothing much to explain here. So it's basically a checklist of things for each of the 6 chapters, not 5, 6 chapters, all right? So it's the first one, introduction. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main things in this order that we should have in any introduction chapter, in any thesis on any topic in the social sciences. Whatever your topic, you can use this as a checklist, okay? So that's the introduction. And by the way, the introduction is the chapter that you can't write at the beginning because you will keep on revising it and you will not know how to write it until you have done a few other things down the line. The second one is the review of literature or the theory chapter. And remember that it is not just about a list of theories. It is a critique of theories. So you have to organize them, okay? You have to chunk them. So just like with the data chapter, you have themes, you organize them. Even here in the review of literature chapter, you need some themes. You need to put them under themes. And then you have to decide which one comes first, which one comes later on. You have to establish the gap. So people have said this, but no one has talked about this. That's why I'm doing my thesis, right? So there is a gap. It critiques, you have to also be critical as well, okay? And the theoretical framework is the outcome of your review. So at the end of your review of literature, it is desirable, but not compulsory. It is desirable to have a theoretical framework. So a theoretical framework, read my article, the one that I referred to earlier. It has a link to that article. It gives you a definition of what a theoretical framework is. It is basically a synthesis of multiple theories together in a way that would help you answer the research question. So the theoretical framework itself is an analytical tool. And you can use that theoretical framework to analyze the data to answer the research question. So remember, your participants do not answer the research questions. You answer the research questions as the researcher. The participants only answer the interview questions. So that's where the theoretical framework comes in. Number 3, methodology. Okay, methodology includes data collection and analysis and overall design and trustworthiness, transferability, researcher positioning, research ethics, all of this. This chapter cannot be generic or textbookish. So you can't just put in definitions of interview, definitions of constructivism, definitions of qualitative approach. No, you have to say why you've chosen this. And that is why the why is more important than the what. The why is more important, okay, in this chapter. Chapter 4 is the analysis chapter. So this is where you're presenting the data. So the analysis of data is also known as presentation of data or reporting of data. Same thing. So analysis, presentation, reporting, same thing, okay? So this is where you have participants' voices, And you can do a thematic analysis, you can do a discourse analysis, you look at emerging patterns, you look at persisting themes, categories, factors, etc. Now, it is important in this chapter not to have too many theories. The data should be analyzed through your own interpretation, not too many theories. So where do we use the theories to further analyze the data? We do it in the next chapter, which is the discussion chapter. And the discussion chapter is also the melting pot chapter, because it's like a melting pot where we bring in all the ingredients. So the research questions are answered here, the review of literature is revisited here, the data is here, the analysis is here, the themes are here, the themes are here. So everything comes in here. So in the previous chapter, theories are minimal. In this discussion chapter, data citations are minimal. So we don't quote participants too much. Instead, we look at the so what, the bigger picture beyond the findings, because this is discussion, it's not findings, okay? We make explicit references to the theoretical framework, which is in chapter 2, review of literature. We make explicit reference to the theories, chapter 2. We make explicit reference to the research questions, which is in chapter 1. This is the chapter where we answer the research questions, not in the analysis chapter, not in the conclusion. We answer the research questions in the discussion chapter, right? And finally, the last chapter is the conclusion. By this time, you are very tired and you just want to finish. So the good news is the conclusion chapter is the shortest chapter, and it should be the shortest chapter because you shouldn't repeat much here, right? And citations, both theory and data, are minimal. So in this chapter, it is your voice. Remember, this is the now what chapter. Previous chapter, so what, right? And the next chapter is now what? So we don't want too many theories. We don't want too many data. Very limited. In social sciences, the conclusion chapter doesn't have to be conclusive. It doesn't mean that there was a problem, I have solved it. We cannot solve problems in social science 100%. And that is why there is always room for further research, recommendations for further research, limitations of research. We cannot conclude it, right? That's not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be conclusive. And the conclusion is a summary of persistent findings. Okay, so we want to avoid repetition. Unexpected findings are also very important. Don't avoid them. They can even be beyond the scope. It might be like you are not even thinking about it, but very important. So what, implication, now what, etc. And my tip is usually end it in a positive tone of hope and optimism, because teachers need to be optimists. We need to be optimistic to our learners, to our colleagues, to our students' parents. So my tip is, whatever your findings, whatever your topic, try to be optimistic at the end. The future is brighter than the past, right? We should believe in that. So in a methodology chapter, what are the components in your methodology chapter? I will skip this because it's just a checklist. There is nothing to explain here. But when you get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, you can use this guideline to follow the different sections. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections in a methodology chapter. And these are some questions that would help you write the methodology chapters. And most of these questions are how questions, okay? So you can use this as another checklist to make sure that your methodology chapter is comprehensive and detailed and nothing is missing. There are more questions here. Okay, so that's the methodology chapter. So the correct order of writing about things in the data analysis is, first you understand the data, then you analyze. Analyze means just saying he said this, she said this, he wrote this, she wrote this. It's still not evaluating it. So evaluation is next. It means what you think they said. Synthesis is where you have the themes So it's like multiple authors, sorry, multiple participants, multiple methods all coming together. So that's where you move on from codes to themes, and of course, finally the expression, which means the writing. So I will talk about some of the issues of writing as well. So in the last part of my presentation, I'll try to finish in 5 minutes. I will give you some, I'll give you a look at some of the most common issues when it comes to writing your thesis chapter. And this is based on my experience as a PhD and master's thesis supervisor. So this, I'm not going to explain them because I don't have enough time. Bu Nunung, I'll take another 5 minutes. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm taking too much time. Okay, so we will look at, so when everything is done, you know how to design your methodology, and you have your participants, and you've got your data, and you've analyzed, and you've identified the themes. The next question is, okay, now I have everything, I need to write, and writing can be very difficult because first of all, you don't know where to start, and secondly, you need to know the discourse features of writing about your data, which is different from the language that we use in the introduction and the review of literature. It's a very different kind of writing. And if you're doing, let's say, narrative analysis, that's very, very different kind of writing. So it's all in English, but the discourse features are very different. The register is very different for narrative analysis, thematic analysis, conversation analysis, autoethnographic reflective analysis. The language, all English, but the register is very different. So some of the common elements are these. The first one is hedging. Hedging is very, very important in social sciences. It means we have to soften what we are saying. Nothing is absolute in social sciences. So instead of saying it has therefore been proved that, or it can be concluded that, we should say it is possible that, the data shows us that, it appears that, findings indicate that, evidence suggests that. So this is softer language. Because in social sciences, which is based on a constructivist epistemology, nothing is absolute. It is all subjective. It is all interpretivist. So we can't say we have concluded, we have proven. It's not the way, it's not the positivist approach in the STEM science, you know, in the STEM disciplines. In social sciences, it is very different. So this is called hedging, very important. Writing data analysis, common problem. So no signposting. It's like you have the themes, but it's not clear why you have this theme first, and then this theme, and this. Why is this theme not the first one? Is it based on frequency? Is it based on prominence? Is it based on your research questions? Opposing arguments. You have just put in arguments in favor of what you're saying. You have just being very convenient. Poor development of argument. Cliche and generalization. Everyone knows that in these times of rapid change. So these are cliches. We just try to avoid them, right? No supporting evidence, okay? Lack of critical reflection. So you have a statement, you have a quote from a participant, and right after the quote, you move on to the next point. So you don't have any commentary, as if the quote talks on its own. That's not possible. You have to say something about it. And simple summaries of literature, which means lack of depth, and not making your own voice come through. If you have too many quotes from participants in the analysis chapter, it means your own voice is lost. There has to be a balance between your voice and your participant voice, okay? And a few other things here that are to do with mechanics, like referencing, scholarly referencing. You have Google search and Wikipedia, but you don't have peer-reviewed journals, cultural insensitivity, things like that. Just being aware of contextual. So if you're using a lot of studies from Australia, make sure that you acknowledge that Indonesia is an EFL country, not an ESL country. So you can't compare them directly. Cultural sensitivity. And language suggestions, these are easy to follow, and you know all of them, but do you actually use them? Probably not. So you can use it as a checklist for bringing variety to your writing. counter argument. And before I finish, on my last page, I have two more things. One is a list of suggestions for your topic. So some of you might be thinking, okay, so this seminar was about how to conduct qualitative research, but what's a good topic? So good news is I have a list of possible topics for you to choose from. These are hot topics. But before that, I just wanted to tell you something. Don't be fooled by what we know as alt metrics, okay? So you might get articles from ResearchGate or academia.edu or from Google citation, fine. But when you're using blogs or social media or academic media or newspapers and magazines, make sure that the actual sources of your articles are peer-reviewed journals that have a good standing. So when I get an email like this, I'm not happy. It doesn't make me happy because it says your article reached 500 reads. It's actually a bogus number because it doesn't actually mean 500 people have read my article. It means 500 people have clicked on the link. They haven't even read it. They haven't even downloaded it. And even if they've downloaded it, they haven't even read it. So out of 500, probably only one people read it. So don't be fooled by numbers like this. This is bogus. This doesn't matter. So go for good literature and don't be fooled by things like this. And this is a list of topics for those of you who haven't started writing or you even don't know where to get a good topic. So these are some of the hot topics, as of today in the area of language education and English language. So you can take a photo and you can choose from them. Here is another list. Again, nothing to explain here. So once you choose a topic, what's the next job? So here is a task for you to do. I want each of you to write just one sentence. And that one sentence is so packed. It is actually a very long sentence. But if you can write it, if you can, it is difficult, but if you can do it, it has absolutely everything you need to get started. So take a look at this sentence here. Can you write this sentence? If I were there at PGRI at Buana, Surabaya, I would actually go around the room and I would check your responses. I would give you 10 minutes for this task. It would have been interactive, but unfortunately it's not possible. So read this sentence here. This qualitative constructivist case study aims to explore the needs of a group of Japanese high school English teachers in relation to their use of code switching by engaging in dialogues through semi-structured interviews and classroom observations and identifying to what extent the practice is perceived as useful in second language learning. Now, it is a long sentence and you don't need to write a long sentence, right? It's not needed. But the point is everything from the topic, aim, objectives, research questions, research approach, research design, methodology, methods, everything is packed in one sentence. So my challenge to you is, can you choose a topic and an issue and then write just one sentence, right? Tonight, before you go to bed, just like this. And then after that, follow the two grids that I showed you to identify your methodology and methods and everything. And then you will have a good research design for your study, no matter what your topic is, okay? Inshallah, you will all be able to do it. And this is a food for thought, is the final quote before I finish. I'm not going to read it again because we don't have time, but pretty much the message here is that when you're conducting research, it always feels very messy. It always feels very, very messy, right? And sometimes you want to give up. Sometimes it's just too much on your head and you just say, oh my God, I'm not good enough, etc., etc. But once you finish, the joy and satisfaction you get from that is when you look back and you say, not bad. I've actually done a good job, right? So my advice to you is hang in there, don't give up, all right? This is what the quote is about. Now, my final slide, this one is some final words of advice to all of you here, especially those who haven't done research before. Number one, choose a topic that you really care about. Not because it is cool, but you really care about it. Second one, choose an issue or a problem not just a topic. So if you say CLT or TBLT, task-based language teaching, that's a topic. It's not a problem. You have to choose an issue, not just a topic. Number 3, perform research with your heart, not just because of course requirements. Don't do it just because you have to do. Without a thesis, you can't graduate. You can't get a certificate. Do it with your heart, okay? Not just for your course. Number 4, be truly knowledgeable about latest research, not just a handful of overused citations from 80s and 90s, latest research. Number 5, try to see the real contribution you're making. Intellectual contribution, not just your final grade, like, oh, I got a distinction, I don't care. No, what contribution are you making? Number 6, engage in constructive conversations with your supervisor, classmates, academics from all over the world. Don't hide yourself. Why? Because my final point is, good research is always collaborative, not competitive. Terima kasih. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Raqib, for sharing those wonderful and interesting materials. And this is really got a lot of things from your presentations. And your presentation is just like attending the whole semester, Dr. Raqib. Attending the whole semester into one day.
That's why it was so difficult, trying to squeeze everything. And I'm sorry, Bu Nunung, I took too much time, but it was very difficult to put in everything. But I just hope that some of you will find it helpful. Thank you.
And it is very complete. Yeah. And I'm sure the audience have already got questions. Then I offer to the audience to deliver the questions. And ladies and gentlemen, you have time to deliver your questions to Dr. Raqib. And please use the raise hand in your Zoom. And I would like to offer for 3 questions first. Yeah. Yeah, 3 questions. So the first is from Mr. Nazar Ferdiansah. Yeah, from Nazar Ferdiansyah, and also, yeah, another 2 questions, please. Okay, so others still find the time, Dr. Raqib. So I would like to give the time to Mr. Nazar Ferdiansah to deliver your questions. Please unmute first.
Bu Nunung, I just wanted to draw your attention. There are some questions in the chat box, so maybe.
Yes. Yes, also, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I found out that some questions are already written in the chat box. Yeah. Okay. We will have that question later, Dr. Raqib. Yeah. Okay. Please do delivering your questions, Mr. Nazar Ferdiansah. Mr. Nazar. Okay. Yeah. Please unmute your audio.
Hello. Hello. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
We
Yes.
can
Okay.
hear you.
Yes, Nazar, please go ahead. I can hear you, Nazar.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Good morning to Mr. Raqib. Before I address the question, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for delivering this material. I think this material is very, very interesting for me, a freshman in college. Um, and you also delivered a difficult word, like for example you described like what is deductive and inductive meaning in previous, and I, I thank you for that. And the question is that as a freshman or as a college student that still in earlier semester, um, how how can I practice, or how can I um, train myself to pick a topic, because there's an abundance of references, but I personally cannot determine which topic that I'm interested in. So the question that I'd like to ask you is that uh, how can I um, how can I choose a topic or a title for me, yeah, for me as a college student that are still in very early in
Yeah,
very early semester.
thank you. Okay, thank you, Nazar. I like the question, and for a freshman like you, wearing sunglasses and helmet on a bike somewhere, very interesting, by the way, Nazar. I appreciate that you've joined from outside, probably on the street right now. It's a common question for a freshman like you who has just started, right? So first of all, don't worry, because if you're a freshman, you still have some time to decide a topic. So there is no rush. Don't rush. But if you remember what I said in the final slide, my final words of advice, choose a topic that you really care about. Don't choose it because your best friend chose it, or because it's cool, or because someone said that it's a good topic. So choose something that you care about. Now, if you are a freshman, then you probably still don't have any topic to even care about because you've just started, right? So give yourself some time, talk to your lecturers, and I think your lecturers would be the best people to advise you what to do. But remember that even if your lecturers choose a topic for you, if you feel that it is not meaningful, then don't do it, because chances are the topic that you choose for your undergraduate, you will be specializing in that for your masters and maybe later even a PhD. So it will not be drastically different from the first choice. So the first choice is very important. Don't rush, take your time, talk to your supervisor, trust your instinct, and finally, try to read recent articles. Now, I know good articles are not free, but the abstract and the table of contents are free, high-ranking journals. So you can only read the abstracts of recently published articles in the last 2 years, right? Little by little by little by little. And then you will get an idea of a topic that is contemporary and hot, and you probably don't know much about yet, but it sounds interesting. And that is good enough for you to choose your topic. You can learn about it later on. So take your time, trust your judgment, choose something that makes sense to you, all right? Thank you, Nazar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raqib. Thank you very much.
I hope to see you in Surabaya, Nazar.
I have to see you too, Mr. Raqib.
All right. You can take me out on your bike, right, Nazar?
Yes, of course.
All right. Bring
Yes,
a helmet for me.
yes, of course, Mr.
All
Raqib,
right.
of course.
Yeah. So very enthusiastic questions, Dr. Raqib. Yeah. And I see from the chat box there are some questions. May I read the questions for you, Dr. Raqib? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Uh, the questions from Bapak Yulianto Sabat. He asks when he decide to choose qualitative approach to his study and he needs some numerical data such as percentage or else to support the qualitative data, can he say that his study still belongs to qualitative research? Yeah.
Yes, so Bapa Yulianto, it is a good question, and even my PhD students sometimes ask me this question. It's a common question, right? So the answer is yes. You can still have numerical data or even quantitative methods in a qualitative study, not even mixed methods, qualitative study. Yes, okay. So here is how it works. A qualitative study is predominantly descriptive and non-quantifiable data. It is rich and thick based on descriptions and critical analysis. And on the other hand, a quantitative study is quantifiable, numbers, statistics, etc. However, depending on your topic and depending on your research questions, even if it is a qualitative study, you can start with a larger number of participants, for example, administering a survey questionnaire. So let's say 100 participants. So it's a qualitative study, but the first method you're employing is a survey questionnaire to 100 people. So the question is, how can it be a qualitative study if I have 100 participants? No, you are using the survey questionnaire to categorize and sort your participants. So it's a convenience sampling strategy which will allow you to choose, let's say, 6 participants from 3 groups. So 2 participants who tend to say yes, 2 participants who tend to say no, and 2 participants who are neutral, let's say, for example. Okay, so the quantifiable data from the survey questionnaire only serves the purpose for you to shortlist your participants to 6. The rest of the study is 100% qualitative because you now have 6 out of 100 participants that you have sorted based on their responses, and your analysis entirely focuses on the qualitative data from the interviews, but not the survey questionnaire. So in other words, you can still have some numbers, even if it is a qualitative study, but the analysis and the discussion is based on the qualitative data, not the quantitative data. The quantitative data is only for sorting and selecting your participants, not a problem. The second option is you can also have what's called a mixed method study. If you want to give more prominence to the numbers, to the survey, then you can have a mixed method study, which means qualitative, quantitative together. And finally, you have to be careful about one thing. So if you have a large number of students in a survey, and if you have, let's say, 10 questions in the survey questionnaire, and they are all close-ended, so Likert scale, true, false, multiple choice, okay? Very, very easy to quantify. 100 participants, close-ended questions, very easy. If you do it in Qualtrics, within a few seconds, you get results and you know, pie chart and graph and bar and everything. But if you have only one open-ended question, just one open-ended question, as soon as you do that, you will get 100 unique responses. Everything else quantifiable, but just one open-ended question, 100 people will answer in 100 different ways. And it would be very difficult to reconcile them. So just be careful. So that's how I would respond to your question. Thank you. Bu Nunung, your mic.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Raqib, for the answers. And can I continue with another questions from the chat box? It is from Mr. Afandi Arianto. he asks whether he would like to know more about the differences between content analysis and thematic analysis. And because he reads some articles and always pay attention to the terms, but he did not know clearly about the terms.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arianto, Afandi Arianto. First of all, thematic analysis is more comprehensive, and as I was saying in my presentation, even discourse analysis, critical discourse analysis, narrative analysis, even these might have thematic analysis. So thematic analysis is as comprehensive as in everything. For example, even with methodology, some theorists believe that a case study is so comprehensive in scope that any kind of methodology is a case study. So even an ethnography can be a case study. Even a discourse analysis can be a case study. So in other words, that's why you can have an ethnographic case study or an autoethnographic case study. So you are having a hybrid of two methodologies together. Similarly, thematic analysis and content analysis can also be integrated into one. In simple terms, thematic analysis is what I showed an example of. We have either pre-identified or emerging themes that would come from the data. So if it is pre-identified, it means it comes from a previous study. We are trying to match the pre-identified themes with the themes in our own data, or we have an open slate and we are getting new themes. So we are getting the codes and then we are getting the themes. So that is, and then we are analyzing the themes in a way so that they will answer the research questions, thematic analysis. Content analysis, on the other hand, which is very common in research on the curriculum, for example, or policy, any kind of written document, is where we are looking at the individual components or the content of a written artifact, such as the curriculum, such as a lesson plan, such as a policy document, such as a government statement. So a content analysis could have characteristics of discourse analysis. So we are looking at metalinguistic features, we are looking at recurrences, we are looking at emphasis, we are looking at contradictions. If it is critical discourse analysis, we are also looking at power, we are looking at ideologies, we are looking at politics, etc. So that is content analysis. But once you've done the content analysis, the next step is you can still do a thematic analysis to categorize the content into certain themes. So in other words, Mr. Arianto, content analysis can also be subsumed under thematic analysis. You don't necessarily have to see them as completely different. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, Dr. Raqib. Still, I can see questions in the chat box here. But before I read the questions, is there any audience who wants to directly ask question to Dr. Raqib?
Yes, Bruno, can I?
Oh, yes, please.
Irfan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Raqib. I was really fascinated with your very beginning of your slides about showing the differences between quantitative and qualitative. To be honest, in Indonesia, the differences of these two paradigms are quite obvious in Indonesia. The followers are trying very hard to compete, not to reconciling, competing, not to reconciling. And they try to get a dominant position, and at the same time they try to put aside others at a peripheral position. And your talk today really helpful, especially for me, to get to know, to get a deeper understanding about qualitative research paradigm. Thank you so much. Apart from that, I would like to ask one question, Dr. Raqib. In one of your slides, I read a point about correlation. Correlation. My question is that what is the significance of correlations when generating more valid data? Or what is the significance of the issue of correlation in qualitative research? Thank you so much.
Okay, Mr. Irfan, thank you so much. First of all, for the comment that you made with regard to competition versus cooperation. I agree with you that in many universities and in many countries, research is seen as competition, and it shouldn't be seen as competition. It should be seen as collaboration. We should work together, not against each other. And that is the best kind of outcome of research can be when we help each other, not just lecturers helping students, but lecturers helping each other, students helping each other within the university, beyond the university. So thank you very much, Mr. Irfan, for pointing out that yes, good research should be collaborative, not competitive. Thank you very much. With regard to your question, I just wanted to be sure that I got the question right. It was something to do with the significance of correlation. Can you kindly repeat the question once again, Mr. Irfan? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. About power relations, what is the significance of power relation in qualitative research?
Okay, very good. Yeah, so power relation. Power relation is an ethical aspect of research. So, for example, in Indonesia, if you are a student and you are investigating lecturers' perceptions of Campus Merdeka, for example, and your participants happen to be your teachers, if you interview your teachers, you might be afraid to ask them certain questions, right? Or on the other hand, if you are a lecturer and you are investigating students' perceptions on something, and if your participants are your own students, if you interview them, they might be afraid of you because you are their teacher. This is called power relations, because power relations will affect the data, how you speak, what you are allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say, what you're trying to hide, things like that. So when you conduct research, ethical aspect is very important. And at Monash University, for example, participants and the researcher cannot have any kind of power relations. If there is any power relation, then they cannot be your participants. So Irfan, that's the main idea of power relations, very important. And the second thing related to power relation is called conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is also an ethical issue. It means, for example, you've got some money from the Ministry of Education to conduct research on particularly policy implementation in a university. The money comes from the ministry, right? And you have to submit the report to the ministry because they are paying for it, and you've got several million rupiah for doing that. Now, naturally, you will not want to say anything bad about the Ministry of Education because they are paying for your funding. They are paying for your research. And that is also going to compromise the authenticity of your findings. You are going to hide certain things because you don't want to displease your donors, your funders. So this is called conflict of interest. So power relation and conflict of interest are two very important things, ethical aspects in your research design. So, Mr. Irfan, thank you very much. Very important question.
Once again, you have already explained about the power relations, and my further question is that how to reduce power relation might emerge during the data collection. Thank you, thank you so much.
So the best way of avoiding data collection is not to recruit students or teachers with whom you have a direct personal relationship. But sometimes it is not possible. Sometimes you have to do it. So in that case, you have to acknowledge that you might have bias, or you might have prejudice, or you might have power over your participants because they are in your class. You have to acknowledge it, and then you have to describe what steps you have taken to minimize that. You have to write that. Thank you. There's a question from
yes.
from Vietnam, Tammy.
Yes, thank you for the answers, Dr. Raqib. It is very important for us to know, because all of questions are some of things that new for us to know. Yeah. Then I will continue to the next questions, and it seems that the participant from Vietnam, Miss Tammy Lee, yeah. Miss Tammy Lee, can you share your questions directly to Dr. Raqib?
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much for your extremely helpful sharing today, Dr. Raqib. We are a group of teachers, a group of lecturers from Industrial University of Ho Chi Minh City from Vietnam, and we are teaching about scientific research writing skills, and it is so lucky for us to join in the workshop today to learn more from you. My question is, when our students define a problem that they want to solve, they have some difficulties in distinguish or recognize that that is a quantitative research or qualitative research, to follow, to choose the best methodology or methods. Are there any signals to help them to define it easier? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tammy. That's a very good question, and glad to see you joining from Ho Chi Minh City. Just to let you know that I've been visiting Ho Chi Minh City every year since 2015. I'm a visiting scholar at Open University in District 3, and if everything goes fine, I'll be there in November once again. So look forward to seeing you. It's a good question, and with the question of identifying a topic and then a theme, a problem or an issue, and then deciding whether it would be qualitative or quantitative, it will depend on the research questions, Tammy. So am I looking at things like frequency or prominence or recurrences? Or am I looking at descriptions and critique and arguments and counter arguments and factors? So if I'm looking at factors, if I'm looking at diversity of opinion, if I'm looking at critiques or opinions, or if I'm looking at categories, things like that, then it will most likely be qualitative. But if I'm looking at frequencies, if I'm looking at recurrences, if I'm looking at percentages, if I have a hypothesis, if numbers matter to me in my research questions, I mean, in that case, it will be quantitative. So in other words, Tammy, the same topic and the same issue can be done both qualitative, I mean, either qualitatively or quantitatively, but they would be shaped by research questions. So if the questions are how and why, then they would probably be qualitative questions. If they are yes/no questions, mainly yes/no questions, they will be quantitative. And that's why I was saying for a qualitative study, we usually don't have yes/no questions. So it depends on that. It will also depend on I mean, as an educator, Tammy, you can advise your students to look at past studies in similar areas to determine. So usually when we read an article for our thesis, we pay more attention to the findings and recommendations. And we usually pay less attention to the methodology. So my advice is we should pay more attention to the methodology to see how other people in other countries have conducted this study and say, oh, I also want to do it like that. So that's an idea that comes to mind. And that might guide us as to whether we should do qualitative or quantitative or even mixed methods. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Raqib, for the questions from Miss Tammy Lee from Vietnam. Okay, hopefully your answer is very useful. Again, another question, Dr. Raqib, but this is from the form that we sent to the participants.
Bu Nunung, can I just say something?
Yes, yes, sir.
I actually, just give me a second, please. The questions that some participants sent on the form.
Yes.
I have compiled them here, so I can, if it's okay with you, I can read out from here.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Do you want me to do it now or later?
Okay, you can answer it now.
Okay. All right. All right. So thank you. First of all, thank you to everyone who sent some some questions in advance to me through Salim and Salim Naban, the head of the Language Center. Thank you very much for coordinating this. There were two reasons why I asked Salim to do this. One is because I know that 1 hour is not enough and I won't be able to cover everything. So if I had some questions in advance, I could answer them in the last 1 hour. The second reason was your questions will give me an idea about what you're interested in, and I can shape my presentation accordingly. So I appreciate those of you who have sent me the questions. So here they are, 3 slides. Some of them I have already answered in my presentation. The ones that are in blue are the ones that I have either not answered or I have answered partially. So I'm going to answer them now very quickly, 3 slides. Bu Nunung, I think 5 minutes, I'll be done with this. So here we are. So the first one is from Okta. I hope you're here. What is data triangulation? If my data are taken from 2 sources, such as interview and observation only, can it be called triangulation? Thank you. The answer is yes. Triangulation means trying to get the same information using multiple methods, okay? Multiple methods means it can't be 2 rounds of semi-structured interview because it's the same method. No, it has to be a different method. And although triangulation means 3, try means 3, triangulation can be done through 2 methods, and usually it's done through 2 methods. So triangulation is when you're trying to establish the veracity of a statement from a participant using 2 different means. So one is where maybe you ask them a question in an interview. The other one is you ask the same question through an email response or focus group interview or a stimulated recall done after an observation to make sure that what they are saying is consistent or your understanding is correct. That is triangulation, and triangulation is a way of enhancing, as I said, the veracity of a finding. So the answer is yes. Question from Mega. Mega says, regarding the number of respondents, how many respondents are suggested in each research design? For example, interview and case study, okay, or narrative. It's a difficult question to answer, but what I can say, Mega, is if it is a qualitative case study, try to keep your participants between 4 and 8. 4 and 8. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have 3. That doesn't mean you can't have 10. You can, but because you want an answer, that's why I'm saying 4 to 10. Now, remember, it's not only the number of participants, it's about data sufficiency. It is about the volume of data. So if you have 4 participants, 2 rounds of interviews, as I said, that's 8 interviews. On the other hand, if you have 8 participants, only 1 round of interview, that's also 8 participants. So it depends on how many times and how many ways you are employing how many methods, not just the number. Okay, but I think 4 to 8 is a safe number. Next, Hanifa's question. Single case study, multiple case study. What are the differences? I have 2 different schools. Can it be called multiple case study? This is a very good question, Hanifa. And even my second year PhDs candidates, students, sometimes they don't understand. So the answer is yes and no. Multiple case study means you have more than 1 case. Single case study means you have just 1 case. But the question is, what is the case based on? Now, you're saying that you have 2 different schools, right? If your study is looking at each of the schools as a system, and within that school, there are individual components of students, teachers, administrative staff, school leaders, and then your curriculum, textbook, resources, logistics. So you're looking at the whole system. If that is how you're looking at, yes, then each school is a case study. So you have 2 schools, 2 case studies. But if you have 2 schools, but you're looking at individuals and the components within each individuals, such as you're looking at teachers, training, qualification, numbers of years of experience, pedagogy, in-class practices, professional development opportunities of teachers, then although you have 2 schools, the number of case studies depends on the number of individual teachers, not the school. So you might have 2 teachers from one school, 2 teachers from another school. So you actually have 4 teachers, 4 case studies based on teachers, not on schools. So it depends on how you are defining the case. So the schools can be cases, but the individuals can also be cases. All right. Next is Galu. Galu is asking, in qualitative research, is there descriptive analysis? The answer is yes, and it has to be used in qualitative research, but it can also be done in quantitative, both. But the answer is yes. Devi is asking, how to develop qualitative research instrument? Do we need certain theory? Yes, and I have answered that already. There are 4 stages, and this is how you can develop your theory. Riris is asking, in a qualitative research, is it possible to include numbers in the form of percentage in the data display? I have actually answered this question. Yes, you can, but the majority of the analysis will be descriptive, and it will be from the qualitative part. You can have some quantification. For example, from a survey or a pilot study that you started to initiate your research, but your research is mainly qualitative. However, you have some numbers, but not a problem. It is okay, right? Ferti is asking, in qualitative research, can we use survey questionnaire to get the data? Yes, it's the same question. Yes, you can, but predominantly it will be from qualitative methods. But you can have a survey, you can even have percentages, but not much. If you have a lot of numbers and a lot of descriptions, then it is probably mixed methods research, right? And finally, this is the last set of questions. Ade, I hope you're here, Ade. And Ade is asking, I'm planning to write research about unearthing motivations underlying reasons of Indonesian academic sojourners, international students studying abroad. The research design, what would it be? Qualitative case study. And if you have access to the participants, I would say an ethnography would be fantastic. So that's my recommendation for you. Ethnography or ethnographic case study. Nukumatus Sharia, how to avoid bias in auto-narrative study. So that was the question that I answered just a little while ago to Mr. Irfan Rifai. It is to acknowledge that you have biases and also to describe what you have done to avoid biases, to just state that very clearly. That's how you do it. Bushra Rashid, how qualitative research can be done in teaching English to struggling learners? That is a very broad question and I can't answer it, but I think you can use a case study approach, and if you do it in an ethnographic manner, if you have direct access to students, that would be a very good approach. By the way, Bushra is my former master student from Monash University, and she is in Pakistan at the moment. Gigi Prayod Yoga Adi Nugraha, when we analyze data to be used as material for writing a thesis or any paper, it will take so long. Yes, of course. My question is, how can we analyze data more efficiently and we can't spend too much, so we don't have to spend too much time? Well, Gigi, first of all, a good analysis doesn't have any shortcut. If it takes time, it takes time. There is no shortcut, but what we can do to analyze more efficiently is to do it systematically. So follow the grid that I have in my presentation, and it would make it easier to systematize your analysis. So it will probably allow you to do more things in less time, but still there is no shortcut, remember that. And finally, Enda Yulia Rahayu, can you inform how to assess qualitative research written by undergraduate ELT? So Enda, you are probably a lecturer, so that's why you're talking about assessment. I think every university should have, and probably PGRI Adi Buana Surabaya does have a set of assessment criteria. And the set of assessment criteria might be based on the different sections of the thesis. So quality of theory, soundness of research design or methodology, the credibility of the analysis, the convincingness of the findings, etc., and the quality of writing and mechanics and APA citation and all of that. So if you have a set of assessment criteria, that makes it easier for lecturers to assess undergraduate ELT thesis. And finally, there's one question by Fajar, who is the head of the Department of English Language Education. But I think I have already answered this question. So Fajar, thank you very much for your question. And that's all. I think these are the three sets of questions that I had. So back to you, Bu Nunung. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for all questions. And one more. Is there any more questions or direct questions from the audience? I'm sure that all questions already asked, and it seems that the audience satisfied with your answers, Dr. Raqib. Yeah. Okay.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No questions. Yeah, I think it's yeah. All questions are already delivered, Dr. Raqib.
Yeah.
Okay, so it means that we have to end up our presentation and question and answer. And I should make a conclusion for the presentation, Dr. Raqib. What a wonderful presentation delivered by Dr. Raqib Chowdhury. We really got a lot of things in which we are sure that it contributes to enrich our knowledge and also understanding, especially in research. Through the explanation from Dr. Raqib, we can understand that designing qualitative research needs some methods and steps so that our research becomes not only well organized, but also result in excellent findings. So next, we also have to pay more attention to some aspects in conducting research, such as research purpose, data, types of qualitative analytical questions, and also analysis design, table, and many more. And we should be grateful for your sharing, Dr. Raqib, today. And I hope that all of your explanation will be worthwhile, useful for our research, our next research, and also for our writing at the end. Yeah. And this is the end of our presentation, ladies and gentlemen. And the next agenda is handover of token of appreciation, and it will be delivered by our beloved head of department, Mr. Fajar Susanto, SSMPD. Yeah. So the time is yours, Pak Fajar. Please deliver to our wonderful speaker, Dr. Raqib Chowdhury from Monash University.
Okay, thank you, Bu Nunung. Thank you, Bu Nunung. This is wonderful presentation from Dr. Raqib, and we learned a lot from this presentation. We learned how to design a research, and on behalf on our rector, we would like to deliver the token of appreciation. Yeah, please. The token of appreciation can be accepted by Dr. Raqib. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pak Fajar. I really appreciate it. It's my pleasure, and I'm very happy that my first academic presentation for this year, 2022, is at PGRI Adi Buana, Surabaya. So it's a privilege. Thank you very much once again for inviting me, and I look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully, inshallah, on campus. Thank you, Fajar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Fajar, for delivering the token of appreciation to Dr. Raqib Chowdhury. Hopefully, it is not the first meeting, the first presentation for us. Hopefully, it will be the next meeting for Dr. Chowdhury sharing to us, to English Education Department. Yeah. And for all participants, ladies and gentlemen, if you want a certificate for our Studium Generale today, please fill out the presentation, the attendance list. Please fill out to the link that is provided, and also please fill the evaluation form in the provided link. Yeah. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, so we are now come to an end of our presentation today, Studium Generale from Dr. Raqib Chowdhury with the topic of designing qualitative research for English language and language teaching. We really wish that this Studium Generale will be beneficial for all of us who are the participants, and not only for theoretical, but also for our practice. And as the as the closing ceremony, closing speech, our English department, Mr. Fajar Susanto, will deliver his closing speech. Time is yours, Pak Fajar.
Thank you, Bu Nunung. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning. The Honorable Dr. Raqib Chowdhury from Monash University, Australia. It is unbelievable that the presentation from Dr. Raqib seemed to have a 4-year study, which is minimized into 2 hours course. We learned a lot of your horizon toward qualitative research, exclusively on the English education circles, so to all respectful participants here. I certainly have faith in that. I cannot deny myself that my present in this section is to signify the end of this corridor. Every start must come to the end. However, Dr. Raqib, once again, I highly appreciate your willingness to spend your important time, vigorous energy, and of course, your massive kind-heartedness to share things we must re-evaluate to take. For the participants from Malaysia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Thailand, and India, I really want to greet you all and say thank you. Our screen and signal are two bonding bridge of us. Yeah, pleased to have you all here. For the participants from Malang, Jogja, Blitar, Semarang, Ujung Pandang, Makassar, and many more, I, Fajar Susanto, the head of English Language Education Department, extremely want to say thank you so much, and no better words can represent this love state. On behalf of this committee, we thank you so much to Dr. Raqib for being keynote speaker. This collaboration may not stop here. We may have another collaboration with another program in the next time. And the times to come, we will have international seminar this year, the first and gold. Yeah. This is some kind of international conference on language and language teaching. We want to make a debut for our international agenda and craft the landmark for our department history. We hope that Dr. Raqib willingly will take part as one of the keynote speakers. We all hope. Yeah. We also thanks to all participants who joined this program, and we apologize for any inconvenience during this program. I think I have spoken lots, and in this limited times, I take a bow. Thank you very much, and see you again in the other program. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for closing speech to Bapak Fajar Susanto as Head of Department of English Education Department. So it means that we are almost to an end of our event, Studium Generale today. I should say thank you to all participants from all over areas, from Indonesia, from Vietnam, from Malaysia, and from many other areas. And also there is a hope that this event will be beneficial, and it will not only be the first. Hopefully there will be other event just like this, led by Dr. Raqib Chowdhury. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And as the representative of all committee, then we should apologize for maybe any mistakes that we have done already. Thank you, and until we meet again in other times. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Mr. Raqib.
Thank you and goodbye.
Everyone. See you. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Raqib.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Thank
you,
you, everyone.
committee.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raqib,
Thank you.
for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Fajar, and hopefully I'll see you in person later this year. If I can come over there or somewhere else, but thank you for
hopefully.
I already feel at home, even if I'm here, because everyone was so nice and very, very well organized event. So thank you, Fajar, Nunung, Feraz there, Salim's there. We had a couple of meetings to plan this, and Salim, thank you for sending me the questions in advance. Everything was so well planned. So thanks to all the volunteers and organizers. Really, really great. I enjoyed it. I'm glad that my first academic engagement of 2022 was with you guys, nowhere else but with you. So thank you. Really good.
Please
Yes.
come over soon, Dr. Raqib.
Dr. Raqib, we will have first international conference or seminar. You may have, maybe we will invite you to be one of one of the speaker. Yeah, maybe this is still daring or this online. Yeah, online. Yeah. Maybe if you cannot come to Indonesia because still pandemic, we still have maybe this blended seminar from online and offline. Yeah. So maybe Dr. Raqib can deliver the presentation from Australia. Yeah. So maybe we will organize this. How then blended seminar can be adopted here for this year. And Mr. Rahmat organized this, yeah, for the head of the committee. Okay, this only information, Dr. Raqib, and we want to have this.
Inshallah, thank you.
Yeah, long with this in this year with the Dr. Raqib again. Thank you.
All right. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Fajar. Inshallah, I'll be able to attend the conference in July. So yeah, that would be great. So I'll leave now, but once again, thank you so much. And the questions were really good. I enjoyed it because really, really good questions in the chat box, and those who sent in advance, and those who spoke on the mic. And good to see participants like Tammy from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and Bushra, my student from Monash in Pakistan, and Darius, who was in my class at Open University, Xuan Diu. He was in my class 5 years ago in Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon. So glad to see everyone. And of course, Bu Nunung once again, and Bu Feraz is probably also here, and Salim. So thank you very much. I will now disappear, but I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Raqib.
Yeah, it's unpredictable, Mr. Raqib, that there are some participants from other countries because we organize for internal departments. But after that, there are so many participants proposed to join this workshop. Yeah, so yeah, I have to accommodate. So that's why at the I have to accommodate, and it is running well. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Fajar. All right, see you everyone. Bye.
Yeah, see you everyone.
Thank you, Miss Tammy. Thank you, Miss Tammy from Vietnam. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for celebrating this workshop. It is so helpful for us, and we really appreciate for this chance. And we hope that in the future, if we have more chance to participate in more activities like this, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.